Welcome back to the Bad Influence podcast where we don't fucking judge you for the way you are. I'm the bad influence that you need in your life, Bjordan Banderas, and let's get today's episode started. But let me ask you something. How often have you felt awkward? You just didn't quite fit in, or maybe you were somehow too much. If you're nodding your head right now, you're in the right place. This is a safe space for all of us who felt that way at one point in our lives. Because guess what? That awkwardness you feel might just be one of your greatest strengths. In fact, socially awkward people just like you, are absolutely essential in today's world. We're going to break down why we need socially awkward people more than ever before and how your awkwardness can actually change the world. You see, awkwardness isn't just a personality quirk. It's so fucking deeply embedded in our psychology, and it has a purpose. We've been socially awkward for as long as humans have been around. It's part of our DNA, part of our emotions, and part of our survival. But here's the kicker. We've forgotten how to embrace it. And the more I see people acting, it's so true. We have forgotten how to embrace our awkwardness. So instead, we've been told to hide it, to tone it down, to fit into some kind of normal. And I'm here to tell you that's bullshit. So today, we're going to dive into the evolution of awkwardness, why it's always been part of us, and why we need to embrace it and how it can lead to amazing things in your life and the world. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why being awkward is actually an advantage in your life. Here's the problem. Society has created this idea that being socially awkward is something you need to fix, something you should be embarrassed about, right? Has that ever happened to you? Like you're a little bit awkward and all of the sudden it's like, oh, you need to change that. You need to fit into this mold. All that fucking bullshit. We've been conditioned to think that if we're not normal, we're wrong. But the truth is, our awkwardness is what sets us apart, what makes us unique. And instead of fucking trying to suppress it, we need to learn how to use it to our advantage. We live in a world that's obsessed with perfection for some fucking reason. Whether it's on social media, in relationships, or at work, everyone is trying to show their best, most polished self, right? But in the process, we lose something real, something raw. And socially awkward people, they don't fit in. They don't fit into that polished mold. And that's a good thing. They see things differently. They challenge the status quo. And they bring a level of authenticity that we desperately need right now. Everybody's being so fake because of social media. So if you're sitting there feeling like you don't quite fit in, like maybe you're too quiet or too loud or just too much, I want you to know that your awkwardness is exactly what the world needs right now. In fact, we need more people who are willing to be awkward, willing to be themselves, because that's where real change happens. For me, my awkwardness came from being hyper aware. I've talked about this before, but growing up, I was always on edge. Always looking around, making sure I was safe. Always looking over my shoulder, like hyper aware. And that fucking hyper awareness made me awkward because I saw things that others didn't. People thought I was paranoid, but I was just tuning into every little detail. I couldn't help it. It's how I survive. But over time, I realized that what made me awkward was actually one of my greatest strengths. Oh yes, it did. It's like my greatest strength. One specific moment that stands out happened when I was growing up in Mexico. I was walking back home after buying some bread. I went to the panaderia, the bread store, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the translation. And this green car, an old Jetta, one of the old ones, the squarish ones, caught my eye. I remember it so perfectly because this particular car caught my eye. There was something off about it, and I couldn't stop staring at it. The windows were tinted so dark, and that usually meant something bad. So the car passed me, did a U-turn, and stopped near where I was walking. A woman got out and started walking towards me. Somehow, my gut told me to fucking run. And I did. And as I was running, I heard her say, "He got away." My hyper awareness, that awkwardness that made me pay attention to every detail, probably saved my life that day. Because once I ran, the lady got back in the car, and then they did another U-turn and they went their way. Why did they do a U-turn? Again? Hey, back in the day when I had hair, curly hair, lighter skin, I would have been sold for a lot of money. I still can be sold for a lot of money, just saying. But after remembering this old memory, I learned that my awkwardness wasn't something to hide. It was a tool, a skill that helped me see the world in a different way. I remember this when I went to therapy and I started working on this to, tune my hyper awareness in a way that works for me. And here's what I realized. That same hyper awareness, that awkwardness has helped me in so many ways since then. It's helped me see opportunities others missed, connect with people on a deeper level, and even build this podcast. Because when I'm recording, when I'm creating the reels, I listen. I'm like, do I sound okay? Does this make sense? Because I want to get better, not worse. And here's the thing, socially awkward people like us, we know these things others don't. We ask questions others won't. And because of that, we see the world in a way that's more honest, more real. And that's a strength. That's why we're necessary. Not a lot of people see the world that way anymore. Now, let's take a step back and look at this from an evolutionary perspective. Why does awkwardness even exist? If it were something useless, wouldn't we have evolved to be perfectly smooth, charismatic people by now? The truth is, awkwardness persists because it serves a purpose. Think about it. Socially awkward people are often the ones who notice things others don't. That hyper awareness I was talking about, that's not just a quirk, it's a survival mechanism. Because in early human history, the people who were more aware of their surroundings and who noticed small changes or potential threats were the ones who survived. That has happened for millions of years. That's why we have the amygdala. Thanks to that amygdala, that little small part of the brain that makes us anxious and everything, we have been able to survive because of that hyper awareness. You hear a noise behind the bushes and you go like, what is that? That's what I'm talking about. And that awkwardness is deeply tied to observation, attention to detail, and problem solving, traits that are critical in both survival and innovation. And now in modern society, those traits are just as valuable because social awkward people are often the ones who challenge the norm, who think outside the box. They're inventors, the thinkers, the ones who push the boundaries, the ones who ask the questions nobody else wants to ask because of political correctness or because you don't want to seem rude. And believe me, I don't give a fuck about that. And here's the reason. This happens because they don't fit neatly into social molds. They're more likely to see the world differently and come up with solutions that others wouldn't even consider. And I have done this in my relationship. Sometimes I come up with solutions that my wife is like, how do you even come up with that? I'm like, I just saw the bigger picture. So instead of trying to fit in, Socially awkward people often create new paths. They see what's not working in society and come up with ways to fix it. And that's why awkwardness persists, because it's necessary for progress, for innovation, and for real change. So let's talk about how socially awkward people contribute to the world. First off, they're the ones who call out the bullshit. They see through the noise, the misinformation, the manipulation, and they don't hesitate to speak up. Because they're so aware of what's happening around them, they're often the first to spot inconsistencies or lies. We pretty much are fact checkers. Even though right now, fact checking, it looks like to be a bad word for some fucking reason. And in a world filled with misinformation, that's a skill we need more than ever. But it's not just about calling out the bullshit. It's about helping others see the truth. Socially awkward people are often the ones who help others navigate difficult situations because they ask better questions. They listen deeply and they really, really pay attention. They're not just trying to make small talk or fill the silence. They genuinely want to understand people and help them find the solutions they need. That's why you are needed. When you're socially awkward, you pay attention to every detail about the person you're talking to, their body language, their tone, the words they're using. And because of that, you're able to offer insights that others might miss. You can help people in a way that feels real and meaningful because you're not just skimming the surface, you're diving deep. In a world that often feels shallow and superficial, socially awkward people bring depth. They bring authenticity, and that's why we need them now more than ever. Now, I know there are a lot of people who have been labeled as socially awkward listening right now who are thinking, this all sounds great, but how do I actually embrace my awkwardness? Well, the first step is to stop fighting it. Stop trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. You don't have to be the smoothest talker or the life of the party to make a difference. For me, one of the biggest turning points was when I started focusing on the good in my life. Instead of letting my hyper awareness only focus on the negative, I shifted my attention to the positive. Oh, yes. And it was hard, I'm not gonna lie. I started meditating, going to therapy, and really taking the time to calm the noise in my fucking head. And that's why it was hard, because there was a lot of noise. So I asked myself, what's good in my life? And once I had that foundation, I was able to build from there. Whether it's focusing on the relationships that matter, like my wife, or the achievements I'm proud of, like owning a home or starting this podcast, I started using my hyper awareness to see the good in my life. And once you do that, you can start building even more. You can create a life where your awkwardness isn't a burden. It's a tool that helps you grow. And that's what I want for you. I start by focusing on what's good. Build from there and use your awkwardness to become more aware of the opportunities in front of you. Trust me, they're there. You just have to pay attention. Here's the bottom line. Socially awkward people are not just necessary. They're vital. We need people who think differently, who see the world in unique ways, and who are not afraid to challenge the norm. So if you're socially awkward, embrace it. Stop trying to be like everyone else and start using your awkwardness as a tool for growth, for connection, and for change. Whether it's in your personal life or on a larger societal level, your awkwardness has value. It helps you notice things others don't. It helps you connect with people on a deeper level. And it gives you the ability to call out the bullshit and guide others towards real solutions. So don't be afraid to lean into it. Embrace it. Don't fight it. Use it. Let it become part of you, because in the end, it's part of you. So use this power, use that awkwardness to change your life, to help others change their lives, and to change the world, especially right now with all the shit that is going on. That's what we need. Because it's thanks to those who think outside the box, who see things differently, that society is able to change for the good. And that's what we need today. And that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in to the Bad Influence podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, awkwardness isn't something to fix. It's something to embrace. Until next time, keep being awkward, keep being real, and keep making a difference. And have a great day.